Good morning, everyone. I am in a rural setting outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There's a small Baptist church here called Shoals Baptist Church, and it is immaculately kept. It's a Saturday morning, so the church family is not here right now. I have the church grounds to myself. It's on a quiet two-lane highway surrounded by soybeans and cornfields. You'll hear possibly a gunshot in the background, maybe a passing truck or a car, maybe a lowing cow. But I have chosen the outdoor sanctuary at the edge of the woods here at Shoals Baptist Church to share a few thoughts with you. So glad that I can come and be with you this morning in such a way as this little small audio sermon. I hope everyone's well. I certainly miss being there with you in Big Bear today. And I thank you for the opportunity just to get a break and be away in my beloved North Carolina. I was reading the gospel message today, for today, as I was flying the long flight from California out here a few days ago. And it took me back to a time when I was 8 years old. As many of my sermons do, they draw from the well of youth and adolescence. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But we have in the gospel message today from St. Mark 2 vignettes, or as they would say in seminary, 2 pericopes of Jesus encountering the other. And that is people who are different, people who might otherwise be outcast or estranged from the mainstream. The first pericope is this Syrophoenician woman, where he meets up with this dear lady who has a child who is afflicted with, it says, a demon, an evil, unclean spirit. And she is obviously a different race, different ethnicity, being Syrophoenician. She's also a Gentile. She's not a Jewish believer. And she comes to Jesus out of her desperation, out of such a point of need as the desperation she feels over her afflicted daughter. She wants nothing more than to see her daughter well and happy. And she comes to her last hope, which is Jesus, this man visiting from Galilee. It's interesting, his exchange with her. It almost sounds like he's putting up barriers at first, doesn't it? He says it's not right to feed the dogs food. First, it must be fed to the children before anyone else. And the children, in this sense, meaning the people of Judaism, the Jews. But she says, but even the children eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. So he engages her really in almost a rabbinical type of exchange, and she actually ups his ante. I love the way her confidence and her persistence pay off in this vignette. Because of that, his heart is really open toward her, and he embraces her faith, and the story of the healing of her daughter is just a beautiful thought, to think that because of her faith, the gifts of heaven were granted to her ailing daughter, at a distance even. She was the other, and probably others with Jesus were wondering, what in the heck are you doing, talking with this woman to start with, and then engaging her in such a way as to bring her to a greater faith. The second pericope is when Jesus encounters this deaf man who also has an impediment in his speech. Another outcast, obviously, a person afflicted in this way wouldn't have been in the mainstream. And yet Jesus has compassion on him and takes him aside, takes him to a place that says privately. And there Jesus does this odd healing maneuver, which is he spits on his hand, I guess, and then touches the man's tongue. And with this one word, aphatha, bids him to be well. And that aphatha means to be opened. Be opened. So this man who has been an outcast, who has had this disability separate him from others, suddenly finds himself healed, just as the woman's daughter is healed. And I love that word, Ephphatha, so I've been thinking about that, just to be open to the possibilities of a greater life and connection with people beyond ourselves. I think it was at that point when I read those that for whatever reason I was taken back to one of my first awarenesses of the other. And that goes back to my roots in the South. As many of you know, I grew up in many parts of the South, Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, and I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, so I really claim a deep Southern root there, but also spent many summers with my grandparents in my younger years, my childhood years, in Birmingham, Alabama. Well, my father's parents, Zelda and Doyle, were good Alabama mainstream people, but afflicted with some of the same racial racism issues, I should say, that is so common, particularly at that time in the 50s and 60s in the heart of the South there in Alabama. So I was with my grandparents, and my brother and I would spend much of our summer there with Zelda and Doyle in their home, and I loved those times. But one thing that always bothered me there was my asthma for some reason. I don't know why. I had asthmatic reactions. And one summer I remember my grandmother making me run up the hill so that my asthma would increase, and then we could go to the doctor and he could see in person how bad my affliction was. So I ran up the hill to their house, taking deep breaths, trying my best to deal with the asthma that did increase as I ran up the hill. And then she took me into the hospital to be diagnosed and for the doctor to see with his own eyes how bad my asthma is. It's kind of a crazy thing when I think back on it. Here comes one of those trucks I was talking about. It's a logging truck, a timber truck, so let's wait just a second and let that get by. Anyway, so they're in the hospital. I'm in the waiting room with her, and for whatever reason, I guess it took a while, and I said, "I'm thirsty, Grandma," and she said, "Well, there's a fountain down the way, just to go down the hall, and just be sure you go to the one that says white on it." Well, that was my first time experiencing the separation of water fountains. I went down the hall, and I don't remember if I found the right fountain or not. I can't remember that, but what I do recall was walking back, I found another waiting room with a sign over it that said colored. I do recall that, and I stopped at the doorway, the entrance to that waiting room, and an 8-year-old boy peered in. I didn't remember any other black folks being in that room, but I do remember a mother, rather rotund. I do recall that, and she had a baby, an infant, and the mother was nursing the baby, bare-breasted. The 8-year-old Stuart stood there at that door, gaping at the sight for two reasons: still dealing with the sign that said colored, the obvious separation that I was encountering now between white and black, and obviously enamored with the very full bosom of this mother nursing her child. I remember wondering if I was going to be seen, and so I didn't stay long. I just glanced in and looked around and got an eyeful, and then I went back down the hall, probably in haste. Don't know if my asthma had subsided or not. I don't recall. I just recall the difficulty in explaining to my grandmother what I had just experienced. And in fact, I never put into words, I'm sure, the sign that I saw overhead colored, nor did I put into words the sight of the black mother nursing her child. For whatever reason, that has really stuck with me over the years, and I remember it as a dawning awareness of the other, that there are people different than us. It's a humbling thing when you begin to realize how small your world is, how cloistered your mind becomes, and how self-centered it can become, thinking that for some reason, whatever that reason is, you and your type, your kind, are the center of the universe. I want to thank that dear black mother for the gift she gave me those years ago. And I want to thank God for the progress that we've made in so many ways to love and discover one another, especially in our differences. It's a journey, isn't it, my friends? To learn how to appreciate people who are different from us and to break down the barriers that separate us from one another. Epatha, says Jesus, be opened. Be open to the possibilities of a wider, greater community. Be opened to the possibilities of growth and a greater self-awareness where we are not the center of the universe. One of the gifts that we can offer our community is that of Epatha, to be opened. Be open to people who come to us who might be different. Be open to change. Be open to a greater experience of who God is in the gift of diversity and others. I want you to take this with you today, if you would, just that thought, and also to rejoice together in the gift that we give one another by our acceptance. We may be all of the same color, for instance, but yet we have many differences of personality, of politics, of belief. Yes, we use the same common prayer book, but you'd be shocked. We'd all be shocked, I guess, if we really understood the depths of our differences just in our basic religious beliefs. I want to thank you for your embrace of me. And I want to acknowledge that in the years to come, good things will come to us at St. Columba's Spirit of Peace as we begin to open our hearts and eyes to a wider world, to the love of God through the embrace and acceptance of the other. The Lord be with you this day. I look forward to being back next Sunday. Don't forget, that is, we have our partnership planning project meeting next Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock. Also, following that will be the newsletter planning committee or team. Whoever's interested in working on our communications in particular, please stick around and we will go over that. Thank you. God bless you. Have a great day. I appreciate each one of you and look forward to seeing you very soon.